Hello, and welcome to Retail Corner Podcast. I am here with Erik Reuter today, and he is the founder of Human-Centered Success LLC, and it is a consultancy that focuses on leadership, focuses on taking care of people. And so, welcome, Erik.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Excited to have our conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Erik and I are both project managers. He did an awesome presentation on the Project Management Institute that I was part of, and kind of reached out, and he's nice enough to join us today. And you focus more on like leadership versus management and more of the human-centered thing. And we focus more on retail, obviously, as the retail corner, And so from a retail perspective, like everybody talks about moving cheese or swallowing frogs or everything else like that. But at some point in your retail career, you have to step up. Right? Whether you're the shift leader or the CEO or whatever else, you have to be better at leadership, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
Oh, and leadership, again, it doesn't matter where in an organization you are. You can be on the floor, or you can be, in the office at the store, or you can be in corporate. But if you are interacting with people, you have the opportunity to become a leader.
Oh, yeah. And so in retail, we talk about, that's the manager, that's the management. And so is there a difference between leadership and management in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And management is command and control. Management is, I'm going to tell you how to do things, and I am going to create the task list, and you are going to follow it. And I have managed your work. Okay. Leadership, on the other hand, is much more about empowering your team members to do the work in the way that they best see fit, because they are the subject matter experts in how they're doing their work. So, so long as they are meeting, base level needs, and if you're not on a manufacturing line where there are very strict protocols for how things have to be done, does it really matter if someone stocks a shelf in a slightly different way than someone else is stocking a shelf, so long as the shelf gets stocked, right, and customers can find the products they're looking for? No, it really doesn't matter. So can you, as a leader, empower your team, empower the members to bring forward innovations, bring forward new ideas, bring forward their best selves, so that the workplace becomes actually more productive, more engaging, you have better retention, and that's true leadership, right, as opposed to management.
Okay. Usually people say it's about the journey, not the destination, but sometimes it's about the destination. It's about getting to where you need to get, and giving people the freedom and kind of safety to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had the pleasure of working in a lot of organizations where, yeah, absolutely, the destination is the thing. I mean, you don't put in a business to just like wander around. You are looking at profitability, you are looking at number of people served, you are looking at certain metrics. However, how you get to that measure of success, good leaders are going to let their valued employees set the course, set the map. You set the vision as a leader, you set the direction, but your staff member is going to choose whether you're using an ATV, a motocross, like whatever it is,
right,
to get there. And most of the time, the vast majority of the time, if you have created an environment where your staff and your team feel safe to bring up ideas, they're going to help you get to that end destination faster, no matter what the journey to get there.
Right. And so you talked about engagement, and so that's a huge thing within retail. It's a huge thing because you're bringing people on constantly. What is something necessary in your mind that before someone's engaged, they have to feel They have to feel safe. They have to feel like they're necessary.
So there's three components of engagement. One of them is psychological safety. So do I feel a part of this group? Do I feel like I can bring who I am without fear of reprisal? Can I take risks? Can I bring new ideas to the group without being kicked out of the tribe?
Right.
So that's psychological safety, which is a key component to engagement, because if you don't feel safe, it doesn't matter how cool the work is.
Yeah.
You're spending your energy worrying about, am I going to get kicked out? Am I going to be on the outside? Am I going to be marginalized? And that's, that can be because of identity. That can be, sexual orientation, sexual identity. It can be what, I talked to a colleague in India, and they have such a regard for where people went to college and university that can be an out-group thing even within the business. So like, he hadn't been to college in 10, 15 years, and it was still something that was being used to marginalize him. So different cultures, different values.
Sure. I mean,
so
there's
how
a
do
whole
you
list
navigate
of
that? How do you create safety?
Yeah.
So that's one component of it, is that psychological safety. Do I feel I am valued and can bring myself to work?
Sure.
So one component. Another component is psychological meaningfulness. So does my work matter? So I had a job where, I was super excited. I was in college. I got to work in a lab. And so I went to work in this botany lab. I thought the professor was really cool. And she was like, you're going to be counting seeds for an experiment that's not going to be done for 15 years. And I was like, okay, this has
Thank you for the demotivation, I guess.
No meaning to me, right? Like,
wow,
yes, it's for certain people that would be motivating. Like, oh, I am part of this huge experiment, multi-year, generating knowledge. For me as a 21-year-old who was only going to be there for 6 months max, that was not, I didn't find the meaning in that. And I can count well. I did not count well. Right? Like, I was not good.
You were not your best counter on those things.
I was not my best counter at that job because I just didn't see the point of it. Right. So psychological meaningfulness. Do we find that the work that we're doing provides value either to us, to the community, etc.? And it is really just a matter of framing, because somebody can have the same job, but if they're seeing, like, stocking the shelves, like, hey, I put diapers on the shelf so that I know that new parents have that for their kids and can easily find that, and that takes the stress away. That's very different than someone saying, yeah, I put a box of diapers on the shelf, woo woo. Right? So it's that matter of framing as well, but finding that meaning also leads to engagement. And then the third part is availability. Do I have the intellectual and emotional bandwidth to do the work? So what are the distractions? What's pulling you away from the work? Is it something within the organization? Is it something totally outside of what the work is? One of the things that, I bring up as a personal example of this is I worked for an organization, and one day this guy comes running through the office, and my boss is like, go see what that's about. So like, I walk over to the guy and he's like, come here. come here, I got something to tell you. And I'm like, you can tell me from 6 to 7 feet away. I'm okay. And he's like, come here. And I was like, eh. So he bolts back out. And all of a sudden, there's all these cops. They tackle him. Gun goes flying. We realize there's like blood everywhere because this guy had been bleeding. And it turns out he was a car thief, and he had been chased down the hill behind the building, managed to get into the building, and scraped himself up. And, so there was, this situation. No one got hurt aside from like his, banged up, scraped up.
Aside from the obvious. Yeah.
Aside from the obvious, but like no cops got hurt. Nobody in the organization I was working with got hurt. However, for me, as like one of my first jobs out of college, that was really traumatizing. And, a month and a half later, I had my biannual review, and my supervisor was like, I don't understand why your productivity has dropped, why you haven't been as, with it, and you're making all these mistakes. And the fact of the matter is that I was so concerned about another security lapse happening. And what if I had been a little more naive and been like, okay, tell me whatever you want to, and like walked up to the guy? I mean, he had a gun. So I was continually thinking about what if something like this happens again. So I didn't have,
because that was one of your first experiences.
Right.
And you think, this must be normal. This must be what it's like.
This is the workplace, right?
Yes.
Cops and guns all the time.
Yeah.
In a corporate office. Yay.
Exactly.
So I didn't have the mental and emotional bandwidth to do the work.
Oof. Yeah. And that's something that can change instant, like a light switch.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also systemic too. So one of the examples that you often hear about this when talking about psychological availability is if you look at certain racial or ethnic minorities, or even, minorities is not the greatest term anymore, because some of these quote unquote minorities are actually majorities, but they're still marginalized.
Sure.
They're still discluded from power, from resources, etc. So so you look at someone from one of these marginalized groups who has to worry about getting from their home to their work. And am I going to be pulled over by the cops for who I am? Am I going to be discriminated against at the corner store when I stop in for my morning coffee? So we all have just a certain amount of cognitive bandwidth.
Right.
And if your bandwidth keeps getting eaten up by worrying about these issues, you don't have as much left to put into your work. You're not going to be as engaged. And it doesn't have to be that identity issue either. Like if you, recently,
it could be limitless. Yeah.
We have a car, but it wouldn't start regularly. Like all of the stuff was going on with it. And so was I as engaged with work? No, I'm worried about my car. Right. I have to run to the store at lunch. Is it going to start? Is it going to, so it can be something as simple as that pulls away from engagement. And as a leader, you can't control all of that. I mean, there's no way you can do that. Right. You're not omnipotent. You can't wait.
You can't be in everybody's business like that either.
Right. But what you can do is create a safe environment with meaningful work for your employees and create as much availability as you can. Create an environment where those internal distractions in the workplace aren't happening. Training people like, what's a microaggression? Maybe you shouldn't tell someone that they sound really articulate, things like that.
Yeah.
That you can control and help mitigate so that your
Right. So if you take this human-centered process, you take your main three ingredients, you toss them into the bowl, and you get engagement, right? Hopefully, right? What are you seeing as like the main, other than just the general productivity or workplace happiness. What are you seeing as a surprise benefit of engagement within teams?
One of the things that you see, again, I mean, I mentioned this briefly before, is innovation. You see people who are willing to bring up process improvements, bring up product improvements, because they feel like they can offer their opinion and their expertise.
Right.
So, maybe the way that the entire organization stocks their shelves is completely obsolete and terrible and takes too much time and causes back issues and whatever it is. But if you are in an environment where your team is not engaged, they're not going to care. They're just going to do what they're told. They're going to get their paycheck and they're going to go home. And then they're going to complain about it, right? You'll see the Google reviews, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'll look it up on Glassdoor. It'll be
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you create this environment where the team members feel like the work that they're doing has value, feel like they can actually spend some intellectual, emotional energy thinking about and connecting with the work, and feel safe that if they raise their hand, they're not going to get smacked down, you're going to see innovation.
So you've got the soil and the seed and the water and all these other ingredients, and what grows is new ideas, kind of thing. Yep. And yeah, that's kind of a cool, because that's what everybody in retail wants. Everybody wants to make sure that they're doing the exact right thing at the right time. And if you stop evolving, you become Blockbuster.
Yay, my first job.
So I had to work it in there somehow.
Yeah.
But and so
it's not on my resume.
I would hope not. Yeah, I was sure. Why not? It'd be fun to throw that on the resume just to make sure. But and so we've kind of talked about the secret sauce, talked about the recipe for all this. If you had an advice for a leader that was starting out, like they're from shift leader to say, you know what, we'd like to make you assistant manager, something like that, where they're getting more responsibility. Mm-hmm. What's your advice to becoming more human-centric?
So, a couple of different things. Listen. Listen with the intent to understand and empathize. And there's a number of different ways you can do that. If you have a really large team, you can do a survey. If it's a small team, take the time to get to know your employees. No one likes to feel like they're a cog in the machine. No one likes to feel that their contributions aren't valued, that who they are is not valued. So take the time. I know that in Western society, we're all profit, revenue, greater efficiency. But the fact is if we're losing employees, if we have employees who are quiet quitting or, have either absenteeism or presenteeism, we're not doing our organizations any favors. And so listening, understanding, I like to use, I'm a big proponent, as you can tell from my organization's name, I'm a big proponent of human-centered design. And so there are specific activities that you can use to really get to the core of what people want and need. One of the things that I've used fairly frequently is empathy mapping. So it's basically a guided interview with larger groups of people that you can pull commonalities, similarities, and you ask things like, what are you seeing in your workplace? What are you seeing others do? What are you hearing from your colleagues about whatever topic you're looking at? What are you seeing as trends or things that other similar organizations are doing? What are your hopes in this position? What are your fears in this position? And so you can create literally a map of what's going on with your team. And usually this tool has been used to create product, services, results. Here's my project manager hat coming back on, right? Usually this is about, how do we create the next best widget for our customers? But if you focus it back on the team, you're going to get the same benefit, but from a leadership perspective.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, we're running low on time right now, but I think we could have another whole episode on just the tools for the human-centered.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. And so, if you guys have any questions or anything else, Erik, thank you again for being a part of the Retail Corner today. And we'll have every link possible below. If anybody wants to reach out to you and become a little bit more human-centered, that's never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing.
Absolutely. Thank you again, sir.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
If you would like to be featured on our podcast, please email us at podcast@retailcorner.live or visit our website, retailcorner.live. Looking forward to having you as our guest on our podcast, and thank you so much for listening.